You know, one of the advantages of aging, amongst a host of disadvantages, of course, is that you get a long look back on life. You know, for example, I got to live through the construction and deconstruction of something people older than 31 years old have only heard about, called the Berlin Wall. And the same is true about the deconstruction of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or USSR, into the mosaic of countries we now know as Eastern Europe. You know, over time, everything ages, but some things change more than others, even disappear altogether, you know, even those you just assumed would be around forever. Like, I guess, the Dead Sea, south of Jerusalem. It's more ancient than Abraham and Lot and has been a source of research and recreation forever, it seems. Who would have ever guessed that it could ever shrink? But if you contrast a map from the back of an older Bible with a quick glance of Google Earth, you'll be startled to see that they have very little in common. The Dead Sea, beloved, is drying up on its southern end. In fact, the volume of water in the Dead Sea has shrunk 33% in the last 60 years. That's because the fresh water in the Jordan River that fed the salt water in the Dead Sea of Jesus' day and when I was in high school, it doesn't make it to the Dead Sea anymore. It gets siphoned off as part of an enormous irrigation project. Welcome back to The Road to Shalom. I'm Fran Shaka, the director of a biblical educational ministry called Hands of Hur, and I'm also the host of this show. For nearly 3 years, we've been on this road to shalom, poking our heads and our hearts into the question of why the world just isn't the way it ought to be. And lately, I've been introducing you to people in my world that actually restore shalom and do it both well and daily. And on today's podcast, we're going to meet one of the most visionary and motivational young men that I know. And he's engaged in a ministry that has something very much in common with the Dead Sea, and that is water. Clean water that comes from the ground and living water that comes from the heart of God. His name is Matt Letourneau, and he's the CEO of NeverThirst, a ministry based in Birmingham with arms that reach as far as Africa, India, and Southeast Asia. But let me give Matt a chance to tell you about all this himself. We're going to jump right into a conversation that I recorded with Matt in my office recently, kind of more of two friends talking really than an interview. So here we go. I'm really excited to have close friend and dear brother, Matt Letourneau, who's the Chief Executive Officer of an amazing, is it an NGO?
No, we're a nonprofit.
Nonprofit, okay.
We're a ministry. We fund indigenous NGOs.
Well, that's what you're going to get a chance to explain, because
An amazing nonprofit that you know nothing about.
That's right. And you and I have laughed about this a lot, considering how well we know each other. But anyway, Matt moved his family to Birmingham
2 years ago.
2 years ago, okay. But our history goes back a lot further, and I think it would be really neat for the listeners to have a better picture of who we are together, who you are, the journey that God has taken you on to bring you to where you are right now, because it's an absolutely amazing journey, a little circuitous, but beautiful to watch from the outside as a friend and brother. So let's just start, I guess, at the beginning. I think we've known each other for 22 years is what I was thinking on the drive over here.
Either 99 or 2000.
Yeah. And we met.
When was Jeff's first year at Auburn?
Jeff's first year was that year. 99 to 2000 was his first year. He graduated in the spring of 99 and then went to Auburn that fall.
And I transferred to Auburn that winter, the winter of 2000, right?
We met in the hospital. So Jeff had gotten in, almost got killed in a terrible head-on collision in Auburn, going to get milk and eggs.
Right at that Canookins intersection. I remember it.
Yeah. I mean, he got hit so hard that his car got knocked 20 feet backwards.
Yeah.
He called, and we ended up down at the emergency room, or the ICU. I can't remember where it was, and you were there. So, and how did you know Jeff then? What brought you to the hospital?
So I had gotten involved with the ministry called the Navigators, and I was invited to lead a Bible study, co-lead a Bible study, and with freshmen. And Jeff was a freshman and had signed up, or had somehow someone found him to do Bible study, and he was in the first Bible study I ever led. And so I loved Jeff. I mean, we had a good connection, and we were hanging out a lot. And when I had heard that he was in an accident, I think his roommate called me to tell me he was in an accident, and so I just made my way to the hospital.
Okay.
And that's where we met.
Okay. Because Jill and I met you, and then I think I came down a couple times to do some speaking down there while you were still there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then you went on with the Navigators, right? So that took a good chunk of your life in terms of years, right? So you went back to Penn State.
Yeah, so the story is coming out of Auburn, I had options to take various sales jobs around the Southeast and potentially maybe go into the family business. My dad is a small business owner, and the Navigators were recruiting me to go on staff of the Navigators, which was something I was not interested in doing. And I actually, back in the day, this was before online applications, and so to please my Bible study leader at Auburn, I filled out the entire handwritten application to go on staff of the Navs, and then totally freaked out, ripped it up, threw it in the trash can, and didn't want to do it. But then was challenged to continue to pray about it. And if you know Auburn, it's just a big circle. And so one night, like midnight, I was driving around Auburn. I was listening to a CD of rewritten hymns that a friend of mine had done. He and another friend of his had rewritten a song on Jim Elliot's quote, said that he is no fool who gives up what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. It was just like a lightning rod in my soul saying, you know, I could do anything for a year. I could live in the jungle for a year. I think going on staff of the Navs for a year, getting this kind of in-depth training, knowing how to go deeper in the Word with my peers before I go into business would be a good idea. And so I went and I shared that with one of the Nav staff at Auburn. The guy said, my wife and I are actually moving to Penn State next year, and they're praying for a guy to join us, and why don't you come to Penn State? Ended up going on staff at the Navs and was assigned to Penn State. And we ended up staying there for 4 years. So like basically my 1 year of what I thought would be turned into almost 15 years on staff at the Navs. 4 of those were at Penn State. 7 of those were at the University of Alabama, all in collegiate ministry. And then I tacked on probably 4 years in what was at that point a call to the cities. It was a city ministry. We went to Atlanta to do an all-encompassing navigator ministry in the city there, which included multiple verticals of ministry to college students, businessmen, the urban poor, refugees, international students, and church discipleship. Yeah. And so that's how I ended up in Atlanta.
That's right. And then we got connected on a ministry level when you left Penn State and came to Tuscaloosa in 2005.
Yeah.
And Hands of Hur was just starting that same July. And then I came down and taught there on and off.
Yeah, every month we would have Fran Fridays with our staff team, and we would come up to Birmingham, and you would walk us through your Bible curriculum, which was the greatest investment of time that we could have ever made. I mean, I think every single one of those staff is still close to you. They're all walking with Jesus. They're all multiplying their lives. It was incredible, in-depth biblical training that we weren't getting and that you couldn't get anywhere else. It was just taught on a different level. We did that with our staff team. You would come every month, invest in me and Julie. You and Jill would come down, take us to dinner, walked us through a lot of years of infertility. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've walked through a lot of mud together. Yeah. We were walking through infertility during those years. You walked through cancer.
Yeah. 2 divorces.
2 divorces. Hard, a lot of painful things.
Yeah.
That we were in each other's lives in those years. And you had a tremendous impact on hundreds and hundreds of students at the University of Alabama coming and teaching at our weekly meetings. And what that's done is that's multiplied out all over the country, you know, as they've graduated and gone out, and as our staff have gone out back in those days. Those were sweet times.
They were. I look back at that, and it was life was seemed a lot less complicated, even though there was so much pain in it. Well, since that time, that was 05 to
about 11.
Yeah. And then you moved to Atlanta. And then before you came back to Birmingham to become the CEO for NeverThirst, I had asked you to be on my board. And so Matt is also on my board of directors for Hands of Hur. So we've got a really variegated and beautiful tapestry of a past. So tell us a little bit about the history of NeverThirst. I know it's connected to David Platt, the author of the book Radical, also kind of a luminary for a lot of young people. He's a young man with an ancient heart, I think, and a real passion, real heart for a lot of things. NeverThirst somehow was connected to him in the Church of Brook Hills. And maybe if you want to just start there, and then we can kind of pick up what you're doing and where and why and how from there. How's that sound?
That sounds great.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're correct. NeverThirst, it was the vision of 3 businessmen that were attending Church of Brook Hills at the time, and David Platt was a guest preacher. They had gone through a pastoral transition. They were in search. He was down in New Orleans Theological. He came up to preach one Sunday, and his message was on Psalm 67, 1 and 2. May God be gracious to us and bless us and make his face shine upon us so that his name may be great and his ways known in all the nations. And so the purpose clause, may God be gracious to us and bless us. May God bless us so that his ways may be known on earth and his ways in all the nations. And the question that David posited to the congregation that day was, have you disconnected God's blessings with God's purpose? And there were 3 business guys sitting in the congregation that day, and it really wrecked them. It hit them with a ton of bricks, and they were saying, God has blessed us tremendously, but what have we done?
Yeah.
What have we done with this? What God has blessed us with? And so that led them on about a 1.5 year journey where they signed up for like 4 different mission trips to say, where is God working in the world? And how would he have us join him? And then they got together every week and just prayed an hour in the mornings, every Thursday morning, just pleading with God, what do you want us to do?
Wow.
What came out of that is that the last mission trip that they signed up for was to Sudan, of all places, before there was civil war, which is now South Sudan. Landed them in a place called Wito, where they were visiting a hospital, and the hospital is a loose term. I mean, it was a brick building with no windows where kids were going to die. And they met a mother of one of these kids and said, tell us your story. And she's telling us a story. They're dying of waterborne diseases. And so they said, show us where you get your water. So she walked them like 1.5 miles away from where they were off the road, came to this disgusting algae covered pond, which is what you see in pictures of the water crisis. She goes, this is where we get water. I come here 5 times a day. It takes me about 4 to 5 hours a day. And at that moment, they said, this is what God's calling us to do. We want to provide clean water, but also living water. And we're going to partner with local churches or the underground churches and evangelists to be the people to implement the solution. They came back here to Birmingham. They formed a board really fast. They raised $10,000. They hired a drilling company to do the water solution in that village. They partnered with a local pastor to facilitate the entire thing so that he could tell them that the reason why he was doing that was because there's a God whose image they've been created in, who loves them and wanted them to have that clean water. And there's clean water. And so that was the birth of NeverThirst. And so when they came back, they were able to share that story with the church. David was now the pastor full-time, and he wrote about NeverThirst in his book, Radical, and committed the church to funding 100 hand pumps in India, and wrote about that in the book. And that was like pouring rocket fuel on NeverThirst. And they're able to start raising a lot more money and having a lot more impact from that point on.
Okay. How do you guys go about picking where to go? Kind of walk us through the process of how a place goes from, let's say, being unknown, in a sense, to having a water solution in its midst. What has to happen?
Yeah, well, the water crisis is like super vast, right? There's still almost 1 billion people on the planet that don't have any clean water to drink. The statistics, just for people that are unfamiliar with the crisis, are that 2,400 people are going to die today just because they don't have clean water to drink. Pathogens in the water that they're drinking is going to kill them. 800 of those will be kids. That's just preventable. The way that NeverThirst works is that we don't own rigs. We don't own equipment, because places that we're working is you can't go in Western whiteface and have an organization, government recognized organization, because we have to work with local government in order to get access to the places where we're working. And so the only way to do that is by a very, very rigorous application process by which we would vet local NGOs that are drilling companies. And so we have a 15-page application process in which they have to do work up to our standards, and then we manage the projects and test the water and make sure that everything is well implemented, safe, and sustainable. What that does is that gives us the ability to work in places where you and I just can't go and do work. It also allows local economy to grow. And so we're helping these business owners scale their companies that own these rigs and these different technologies, that are bringing clean water to people in need. So once we find these places in the countries that we work, and the reason we choose the countries where we work is that we want to go to the least resourced places on the planet. We've never done any work in Central and South America. We don't do any work in Haiti because they're saturated with organizations that are working there. Yeah. And so we're looking for places where there's hardly anybody working, where the water need is incredibly pronounced and what would be considered least reach according to kind of Operation World type metrics. Who's in dire need of the gospel, where there's no churches, where there's very low percentage of Christians, and the church is generally underground. So how can we reach the unreached with water and the unreached with the living water?
Yeah.
2 birds, 1 stone.
Okay.
And so we will not commence a water project without an implementing either church planter or itinerant evangelist, mostly all through the underground church. And so we have people on the ground that are, I guess Christian spies is almost the best way that you could put it.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like there's some danger involved with.
A lot of danger. It's like the last time I was in India, every meeting we had was clandestine. It was very much like go to a place and then go back and get in another car and go to another place. And because India has anti-conversion laws, as does Nepal, some of the highly Muslim places that we work, like in Chad and in Niger, our board votes next week as to whether or not we're going to go into Pakistan and Yemen. And all of these places are deeply, deeply underground operations that we're doing. And God and his goodness to people have his people and have his church underground in these places. And the NGO CEOs that we work with are generally believers, and they're connected to the underground church. And there's these pastoral networks that, the way that you and I have experienced church is 4 walls,
Yeah.
And these people, there is no physical church. The churches that are being planted from the water projects that we're doing, they're meeting under trees and they're meeting in huts. They're meeting, 10 of them, 15 of them together. A lot of them can't read. And so like Bible translation doesn't help them. It's all orality. They have to have recordings of scriptures, and they have to just have the scriptures read to them by someone who can read. But they're wide open because we're meeting their basic need of water. They're so desperate.
Yeah.
They will listen if we meet a physical need.
Yeah.
So we're trying to mimic Jesus' ministry as closely as possible by meeting a physical need in order to meet their spiritual need. We're not trying to prolong suffering on the planet, just by giving them clean water.
There's a really powerful passage in Exodus. I think it's Exodus 6, where God's talking to Moses and he says, tell the Israelites that I'm going to deliver them from bondage. I'm going to rescue them from their oppression. They're going to see my mighty acts. I'm going to take them out from underneath their burdens. I'm going to bring them into the land I swore to their fathers, and I'm going to give it to them. So it says Moses told them all this stuff, but it says they did not listen to Moses because of their harsh slavery and their severe bondage. And I can't remember who said it once, but I heard a missionary say that hungry bellies have no ears. And water, we just can't relate to that, can we?
No, not at all. When you say that, it flashed me back. I was sitting in a meeting on the border of Assam state in India, right on the border of Bhutan in India. And I was sitting in this meeting, and I'm the first white guy that they'd ever seen. These guys, and I'm not even that white. I'm half Filipino.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but they're looking at me. They don't even know what to do with me. And this 60-year-old man says, in America, how far do you have to walk to get your water? And I thought, oh goodness. I was like, well, what room am I in? 10 feet. If I want it hot, I just turn the one on the left.
Yeah.
It's just mind-boggling. Yeah, and the burden of the water crisis falls on women and girls. And so, basically, if you're born a girl in one of these countries, in one of these villages, your lot in life when you're 5 years old is to lug 2 45-pound jerry cans, if you can, or drag them to water 4 to 8 hours a day. And that's your life. You can't get an education. That's where you're getting trafficked, because that's where traffickers are on the well-worn path to get water. You can't rise in society. It all, if you fix water, you're not just fixing health and premature death, orphan crisis. You're addressing trafficking. You're addressing education, women's ability to rise in society and actually have a life. It's over 1 billion hours a year combined is what women walk just to get water.
Just to get water.
It's unfathomable. It's truly unfathomable. The other thing I thought of when you were talking was, I was visiting an organization, a large ministry organization that I did not work for, nor do I work for now. They do a lot of international mission trips, Westerners going overseas. And I was touring their office, and I saw a picture of a gospel presentation, but then they just had this one little side office that was kind of labeled kind of like mercy or, a justice ministry kind of arm that they had started. And I said, well, tell me the story about this, because this is off brand, I guess, for what you're saying your ministry does. And they said, well, they're a few years ago, we really saw the need or the hole in just our gospel messaging, and that we were in a village in Africa. And as we were presenting the gospel and with the tool that we used to present the gospel to this village, a little boy died of starvation.
During the presentation.
And I was just dumbfounded. I was like, yes, we need to give the bread of life, and gospel messaging is essential. There is no hope without the gospel message. But what that kid needed before that was a sandwich. And so I guess what rivets my heart about what I do is like to see the pleading of people and their basic need that opens them up to hearing anything that you would have to share with them. I got to tell you one more story. I was in India in June of 19, and I went into this village in the province that we're working in through translation. I was talking to the pastor, and I said, well, tell me the story about all that it took to get clean water into this village. And the reason I was in that village is because my kid's dentist, Shelby Pediatric Dentistry, had sponsored the hand pump. And so I wanted to do a little thank you video to show him the impact. And I go in, I say, tell me the story of what it took to get clean water here. The pastor's name is Budram. And he said, well, I had a burden for this place for years. And I'd been coming here for months, trying to share the good news of the gospel because I had converted from Hinduism to Christianity. I believe in Jesus. I follow Jesus. I wanted these people to know Jesus. And they told me, do not come back. We don't want to hear your message. Do not come back. We do not want to hear your message. And he said, if I was so burdened for these people, I kept coming back. And often I would come with my family, and they killed my 5-year-old and my 7-year-old son and said, do not come back. We told you. And then about a quarter of a mile away was an open well source that they were drawing water from. It was nasty. They put 2 armed guys there with machetes and said, anyone who talks to this man can't get water anymore. So our guy on the ground that recruits pastors in India connected with him and said, if you still have a heart for these people, if you still want to go back to these people who killed your sons, he goes, if I can get you clean water to go back to them with, would you still want to go back there? And he said, yes. And so he went back. Our whole process is they have to want it. They have to raise like a repair fund for this solution. It's about $150 the village had to come up with for a repair fund. He said, if I get you clean water, will you listen to me? They said, yes, we will. They went through the whole process. We did a drill. It was successful. Water test was clean. And this is him in blue shirt. His name is Pastor Budram. And this is the house. These are the believers now that have come to, I know the people can't see this.
I'm just looking at this picture.
And these are the people who are now meeting together as believers. I just can't even imagine the faith, and the love, right? How do you love people who killed your children? And it's like, if that's not a picture of God the Father loving us,
the unlovely,
this is a picture of one of the little girls in the village showing what she had to do to get water before. They had to climb down into that well with a little cup, get a cup, climb back up.
Oh my goodness.
In a basin.
Yeah, that looks to be about 15 feet.
It was deep. Of the 800 kids that will die today because of the water crisis, not all of them will die because they got sick from water. There's a number of them, dozens of them will die just because they fell into
trying to get water.
Yeah, trying to get water.
Wow.
Like trying to get into something like that.
So is the problem with this well how shallow it was?
No, I mean, it was just...
Or is it a sump that things drain into that pollutes
that's just
it?
groundwater and has all pollutants all in it. So I was in Chad, Africa, January of 20, right before the world shut down. Went into this village one of our pastor partners had identified as a place where we wanted to drill. And we said, where do you get your water? And one of the ladies showed us this.
Oh my gosh.
She says, we ride 4 hours on a donkey to get this. And our pregnant ladies, we're dying, we're sick all the time. Please come.
I mean, that's just mud.
Yeah. That's not chocolate milk.
No, I was going to say it looks like chocolate milk, but it's or cocoa.
And Fran, this was the first place we drilled in Chad. And in Chad, it's an elaborate system, like $100,000. We built a solar farm because the aquifer is so far below the ground. You can't just use a hand pump like the one I just showed you in India. It's just, you can't pull up the water. And so we built a solar farm, attach it to a solar pump, sucks the water into a massive tank as big as this room, and it gravity feeds it down into different tap stands, and girls can come and just turn a faucet and clean water. And so we did that here. Our geologist did the survey, said, this is the aquifer. It's right here. Drill here. So, we're drilling 400 feet, to tap the aquifer in a place like Chad.
Yeah.
Drill, dry as a bone. Totally unsuccessful drill in this village. Our geologist, he's like, I've never been this wrong. I've been doing this 30 years. I've never been this wrong. Our pastor there is a guy named Musa, Muslim background believer, came to faith. He's been reaching out to this village. The cook for our drilling team tells our Africa programs director, who actually lives in N'Djamena, Chad, says, I know that you're Christians, and I think you would be interested to know this. The night before you started drilling, all these people are so desperate for water. They came out with chickens and a goat and they slaughtered them and they rubbed the blood of all the chickens and the goats on your machines and was praying to our animist gods, our ancestors, and to Allah for water and for success. And so when Musa heard this, who's our pastor, he got his Bible, his Arabic Bible, and he held it up because the whole village was there. And he did basically almost like walking around Jericho. But he held up his Bible and he said, to the only true God and Jesus, his only begotten Son, in whom there is power to bring water out of the ground, may these people know and never doubt that there is no power in Allah, there is no power in their ancestors, but there is only power in the name of Jesus to bring water out of the ground for them. And may they never doubt and may they know forever that there is only power in the name of Jesus. And may they know that today and follow the only true God. And he tells them, move the rig 30 meters that way and drill again. They drill again. And it's been literally, all of our metrics showed it's the highest yielding well we've ever done in the history of NeverThirst. It was like a modern day Elijah.
I was just going to say, this sounds exactly like Mount Carmel.
Fran, with where we are in the world, in our country, in everything, it's like NeverThirst and working internationally and seeing the church and seeing the question I think so many people are asking in the church is, where's the power of God?
Yeah.
Where is the power of God? Like, where is
I
God?
I literally have been wrestling with that the last 2 weeks.
It's here.
Yeah.
This has been the greatest gift to me of seeing the tangible power and working of God in places that no one's ever heard of.
Yeah.
Like, he is working, he is moving, and he's saving lives physically and spiritually in places that you and I didn't even know exist.
This all makes 100% sense to me because the burden of this whole podcast, the road to shalom, has been the fact that shalom is what was lost in Genesis 3. And we've had a gospel of justification only, a guilt-focused gospel that leaves out the corruption, the havoc it has wreaked in all of creation. Hosea says that the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, the beasts of the field are dying because of our sin. And I think this whole subject, and this, has a special interest to me because I came to faith out of the drug culture in 1970. I started work in 1973 with working on the Clean Water Act. For the first time in my life, realizing what we were doing to the waterways of this country, just dumping stuff it was so despicable I couldn't even look at it. But I look at so much of the division and everything that's going on in American Christianity, American evangelicalism. A lot of it's rooted in the fact that we have such an anemic understanding of sin and an anemic understanding of the gospel. And I think God is committed to restoring shalom. That's how the story ends with Jerusalem comes down on the new earth. And I think when you get involved in shalomic restoration, God's there. God's there. We saw that when we went to Guatemala with the orphanage. I think this, but when Jill's mom died, she left her some money and Jill paid for the well at the orphanage, and that well's still there and it's still pumping water. I don't know. I was getting ready for our podcast. There's more references in the scriptures to water than there is to bread or wine. My burden for anyone that's listening is to understand that what NeverThirst is doing, what the energy and the joy and fulfillment that Matt is experiencing, is a direct consequence of being involved in the gospel, the coming of the kingdom of God and the turning back of the loss of shalom. And I want to say that where that is done in earnest, that God's power will be there. And I feel like so much of what we've become has been so much more to do with ourselves than it is restoring shalom. I was reading in 1 Samuel when Eli died and his daughter-in-law gave birth and died when her husband Phinehas was killed. They named the child Ichabod. The glory has departed. And this is a bold statement, and I'm not going to say it's directly from God, but sometimes I wonder if the glory of God has departed from our world here because we've lost the other half of the gospel, the side that has to do with the needs of the world. And it's interesting. I don't know if you probably know this, but that passage that we started this with in Psalm 66, 1 and 2, may the Lord bless us and keep us and make his face to shine upon us, that his ways might be known on earth, his saving power to all generations. That's a mashup. That's a hybrid of the Aaronic blessing from Numbers chapter 6 and the Abrahamic blessing from Genesis 12. And I just feel like we are robbing ourselves of the blessing of God, the power of God, because we've separated ourselves from the purpose of God. Anyway.
I will say this, and I alluded to jadedness and hard-heartedness and things like that, and I think like if your perspective is just, I learned this from you. How you see,
yeah,
is really important. And so what God has also done as such a kindness to me is right when I am down on the American church or the West, or whatever it is, God has connected me and our team with just unbelievably godly and generous people, American people in the church. And they're low profile, wealthy, not wealthy. People that give to the point of pain, people who have said no to all sorts of other things that they could do with their resources because they've been burdened with the water crisis and because they see this as like the most sensical and tangible way to get the gospel to the unreached is by, meet this tangible need and you have a reason to be there. Give you a reason to be there. And so the people I've had the joy of being able to sit down with and meet has reinvigorated me and given me new hope to see how God still is working deeply in the hearts and the lives of his people here in the American church.
That's a good rebuke. And I received that.
Yeah.
But it's true. It's true, Matt.
Yeah. We don't see it. And I think that's how it should be. I think really good work is being done in secret, and that's how it should be done. Mm-hmm. They're not posting it.
Yeah.
They're not celebrating their generosity in a way that people know. But it's like deeply, deeply committed believers that are literally changing lives and changing stories of all these people.
And I think for them to be able to see the power of God.
Yeah.
And for them to be able to now become heralds to others of that power. You and I know this because you know me so well. And so I stand exhorted. That was a good word. Hands of Hur exists because of the same kinds of folk. I think maybe the word I would have would be to anyone listening or anyone they know that is listening that has lost their joy, has lost the sense of exuberance, the sense of purpose, the sense of being a part of something amazing just by being a Christian, to consider what they've heard today, because I feel like it sure transformed a lot of your heart. The story is spreading. You've given me a couple shirts, and I run into people and they ask me, are you with NeverThirst? And I said, no, I believe in what they're doing. And, let's do two things here. I think one, we're going to kind of wrap up, but I just want to encourage people that are listening to understand that part of the joy and purpose and fulfillment that comes from following Jesus is being involved in being a part of the solution that he has secured through his death and resurrection, in terms of being a voice to the voiceless, a hand to the helpless. And this has nothing to do with politics, has everything to do with the biblical narrative and why God's got us here in the first place. And I think that there's that verse in Isaiah 58, if you pour yourself out for the hungry and satisfy the desires of the afflicted, then will your light rise in the darkness and your gloom be as the noonday. He will make your bones strong, satisfy your desire in parched places. You'll be like a spring of water, whose waters do not fail. And I just feel like that's the living water that you're talking about giving to people. God wants to give that to us in America too. And I think that comes through just catching a vision. So what can people do to be a part of NeverThirst? What can they do?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you asking. These people that we have the privilege to serve, their reality is that their life is unbelievably hard. We have a lot of people here in America, their lives are very hard. But these people, they don't have, the poorest of the poor don't have water. And they're walking hours a day to get it. And it's suppressing women in every way. And it's just, and they don't have access to the gospel. And so they will never be able to get a passport, get on an airplane, come here, tell you about their need for water. They just are never going to, they don't know anything that's even out there, outside of their villages. So I feel like my role in the body of Christ is to be a voice for them, be a voice for the voiceless, to advocate for people that cannot advocate for themselves. They cannot tell their situation. And so that's why I'm pleased to be here to share with you, to share with anybody who'd be listening about this, is the tangible way to get involved is to look and see where we're working. And if God particularly burdens your heart for a place or a project, to give. And what we will do is that we will take you on a journey of communication with you to share with you exactly how your money is used on a project level. And
so you stay in close contact with your donors?
Well, we have donors in all 50 states and about 27 countries. There's like 20,000 of them out there, so we can't have personal contact with all of them.
No, but I mean, they're kept abreast of what.
Well, there's different tiers. I mean, if you come in on a project level, which our cheapest option for a well is $3,500, and just because the water table is high, and like India, it's easy to access this water. And then we do stuff like biosand filtration systems in individual homes, which is like $400. If you come in at $3,500, then you will go on a donor journey where you are getting what's called intimate information in terms of like, this is where it's gone. This is the progress. This is the prayer requests. This is the name of the village. And then at the end, you'll get like a really nice kind of high def PDF 6-page report with pictures and testimonies of women in the village who have been directly impacted in terms of before and after, and that implementing pastor in terms of sharing a testimony of like, this is what I was trying to do in this village before we had water. And now this is the spiritual impact that you've helped make through your generosity and the spiritual traction that's happened now in this place. And so it's just trying to be 100% transparent in a day and age where it's like people give money and they don't know what people are using and what exactly is the ROI on this. We want to excel in not just an excellent sustainable water solution, but also in the spiritual ROI of you gave. This is exactly where it went. These are the GPS coordinates. You can look it up on Google Earth. You can see it. And these are the testimonies of the people. And we have a plaque with your name or your business on it that we send you a replica plaque with that too, just to try to excel in gratitude, because we know that you could give in 100 million different places.
One of the things that struck me, and I think this maybe is worth pointing out, and I had never made this connection until listening to you today. I mean, you could have a burden for sex trafficking. You can have a burden for nutrition. You could have a burden for education. You could have a burden for church planting. You could have a burden for disciple making. And who would have ever thought that investing in water, it addresses all those things. And yet the way you unpacked it, it makes perfect sense. So I just would encourage people to check out NeverThirst.
NeverThirstWater.org.
Yeah, NeverThirstWater, one word, .org. And maybe God will lead you to be a part of something that's life-changing for villages, not just for individuals.
I would say one last thing, Fran. If people are truly interested in, maybe they don't have resources to give, we are looking for ambassadors in every state, people that would leverage their network and just be an ambassador for the people that we're serving. We'll swag them out with all the stuff that they want, give them materials to share with their friends, host events in their home, whatever it is, just to raise the flag. We'll do it all for free, just to continue to get the word out. So our hope is to have ambassadors in all 50 states, that are telling the stories of these folks, wearing the stuff and doing something practical and tangible to bring the gospel to these places.
Well, I'll tell you, $3,500, that's nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. This may sound like a crazy thing to do, but I have always had a deep commitment to water conservation. I turn the water off when I'm showering, when I'm soaping up.
That is so you.
Yeah, it is. It is. And maybe just for a week, if you're listening, why don't you, for a week, just when you're showering, get your hair wet, wash your hair, turn off the water and suds yourself up and leave the water off to remind you that there are people in the world that are walking 4 to 8 hours a day to get water that's undrinkable just to try to stay alive. And maybe if nothing else, while you're in there thinking how stupid this suggestion is, that you'd pray. Pick one of the countries. Go to the NeverThirst website and pick a country and start praying for it. I really mean that. I think it's just making us sensitive to the world that God's called us to, that we can make a difference in. So, Matt, thank you so much. Thanks for being my friend. Thank you for doing what you're doing. I really respect it.
Well, Fran, you've had such a deep and lasting impact on my life. I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if God hadn't have intersected our path. And so I'm grateful for you, my friend.
The year I came to faith, 1970, Canadian folk singer Joni Mitchell wrote and released a song that became a permanent paving stone of the cultural highway of the era. It was called Big Yellow Taxi. And it was the chorus, though, that embedded itself in our collective psyche, and you probably even recognize these lyrics. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone? Now, to be honest, the two people in all of human history who should have written these lyrics are Adam and Eve. They're the only ones who had the crushing experience of watching God's good creation turn on itself and become the groanings that we still live with today. They truly know that you don't know what you've got till it's gone. And I've said repeatedly over the years here that we have to look at the end of God's story to really understand what the loss of shalom is and how far it reaches. Just read Ezekiel 47 and Revelation 22. You'll see astounding descriptions of the new earth and a city, Jerusalem, the place where Yahweh will finally dwell again with his children. You'll also notice, beloved, unmistakable references to water, clean water, healing water, abundant water, all flowing from the throne of God to the Dead Sea and turning it into a freshwater miracle. Beloved, the absence of clean water and the presence of water that makes children die is all part of sin's long half-life. 800 kids a day die because of what happened in Eden. Another consequence of Eden is that we live right now in an age of militant narcissism, the crazy belief that you and the rest of the world needs to pay attention to what's important to me. And Matt's stories are a howling reminder that most of what gets us worked up today will not prevent us from waking up tomorrow. So I'd like to ask you to marinate in what you heard today and prayerfully determine something, anything you could do, your family, your small group, your business, your class at school, whatever, to give clean water and an introduction to the one who gives living water to someone, somewhere, somehow, soon. See you next time. Shalom.